Did you know that a little bit more than 500 mothers a year in the United States kill their own infant children? These are the actual cases of mothers who have committed filicide, or the killing of one's children, based upon arrest records and court cases.
All nurses to the nurses station.
Viewer discretion is advised.
This filicide tragedy would occur in the heartland of America in a quaint town called Bartsville, Oklahoma. Bartsville, Oklahoma is located about 50 miles north of Tulsa, Oklahoma. There, on November the 4th, 2010, one Mrs. Lindsay Dawn Fittler, a 27-year-old mother who had recently been released from the labor and delivery ward of the hospital, ended up killing her 10-day-old daughter. Maggie May Trammell was her name. Now, Miss Fittler said she did not intentionally kill her daughter, but she did so nevertheless through neglect because she was under the influence of drugs. Fittler had been using methamphetamine for 3 days before the baby's death, and she was out of it when the child died on her time. This case for me is the worst that we have ever reported here on M&M, because her little 10-day-old baby was placed in a top-loading wash machine with a load of laundry. That's right, she was washed with laundry. Now, the tiny baby was inside the top-loading wash machine for up to 40 minutes before she was discovered. Her little body had gone through the entire wash cycle. And we're not talking about a modern-day wash machine, we're talking about the old-school washers, top-loaded, they could rinse and wash anything. And the baby's body would not be found by the mother, but by Fittler's aunt after she heard a strange sound from the washing machine and opened the door only to find the crumpled body of Maggie mixed in with the clothes. This same aunt would call police officers to Fittler's downtown apartment at 7:42 p.m. that November 4th afternoon. In the background of that call, 26-year-old Fittler is heard saying, "My baby is dead." She can then be heard arguing with her aunt, Rhonda Coshat, who was heard on the call saying, "No, I did not kill your baby, you did." So the mother was already developing a case to defend herself by blaming the death of her child on her aunt. Now, upon arrival, police charged Fittler with second-degree manslaughter after initially arresting her on drug charges. Now, long before this tragedy, family members had been concerned about Fittler because of her past drug use. Earlier that same year, they had tried to get her parental rights revoked before the birth of her third child. That's right, I said third child. She had two boys that were much older than this baby. And her young mother had been arrested in April that same year for taking drugs when she was 4 months pregnant. Additionally, she is suspected of being hooked on crystal methamphetamine and taking the drug the night of her daughter died. Wow. In a minute, you'll find out just how many drugs she was on when her daughter died. Now, Fittler's two other boys, aged 4 and 3 years old, were taken into care by Family Protective Services, and the last thing you want to do in this country is get Family Protective Services in your life. Now, the infant's father, Benjamin Trammell, said he can't believe his girlfriend deliberately killed their daughter. He said, "Inside my heart, I can't believe Lindsay would have hurt our little girl." He said, "I don't believe it in my heart, to be honest with you." Now, paramedics had desperately tried to revive the newborn baby after she was pulled out of the wash machine, but she was already dead on arrival to the hospital. Sad case. Paramedic John Hauser, who worked on the baby, said, "Terrible." He says, "I don't even know how to describe it." Now, a lot of these guys have seen a lot of cases with adults in car accidents, gunshot wounds, and everything else, but they said this devastated him more than anything. Fittler has a long criminal history with arrests for assault, driving without a license, and not having her two older children in car seats while driving. A chemical analysis test of the mother's blood after her arrest will show that Fittler had methamphetamine, amphetamine, opiates, and benzodiazepine in her system. We're talking about 4 drugs. The Oklahoma State Medical Examiner's Office has ruled the very small 10-day-old baby had died of drowning, and that this drowning was a homicide, not an accident. It's pretty hard an accident for a child that young to get into a washer by itself. Now, the Washington County District Attorney's Office the following week charged the baby's mother, Lindsay Dawn Fittler, with first-degree murder. The report notes that the baby had numerous contusions and abrasions consistent with the conditions that will be endured while in the wash machine during a wash cycle. There were no drugs or alcohol in the baby's system according to toxicology tests performed by the medical examiner's office. At least the pain wouldn't have been felt. Now, the baby's great aunt, Rhonda Coshat, told authorities she had fed Maggie May and changed her diaper before Fittler took the infant to another room, saying she was going to put the girl to bed. Now remember, the aunt said she changed diapers and fed the child, giving it to the mother. She said the mother went in another room to put the child to bed. Now later on, the mother will change the story. Now Coshat, the aunt, told police she found the baby in the wash machine, which had been making noises as if it were out of balance. But Fittler at the time denied placing the baby in the wash machine. The murder charge alleges the baby died because Fittler failed to adequately care for the infant due to exposure to illegal drugs. Extenuating circumstances, but still murder. Lindsay Dawn Fittler, 27 years old by the time her trial came around, pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter in the death of Maggie May Trammell, who was just 10 days old when her aunt discovered her inside of a running wash machine. Fittler told investigators she didn't know how the child had gotten into the wash machine. I imagine you wouldn't know much if you were out from drugs. Washington County District Judge Curtis DeLopp, following recommendation from the District Attorney's Office, sentenced Lindsay Dawn Fittler to a split 30-year on a child neglect charge and 2 4 years in prison for a second-degree manslaughter charge. The prison sentences will run concurrently. And then the judge did something else in this particular case to make sure that her other children were protected should she get out of prison. Now, the split term calls for 15 years to be served in prison, followed by 15 years of probation. Child neglect is defined in Oklahoma as a violent crime that requires the defendant to serve 85% of the prison sentence before being eligible for parole. That state had did this a long time ago. Now, since her arrest, Fittler has said repeatedly that she does not know how her baby got into the wash machine. When we do things tragic in life, that next day we always wake up, we don't know what happens. Now, according to a pre-sentencing investigation report, Fittler says she is guilty of child neglect because of her drug use, but she does not believe that she put the infant in the wash machine. Again, she keeps sticking to the story to protect herself. It's too late, the child's dead. Fittler had this to say about the incident. She says, "I know everybody has slammed me, and I deserve some slamming for taking care of my children while I was on drugs. But I know I would not hurt my children. I never have." She states in the report, "It's all so bad and everyone has spent so much time putting me down. I feel like it's them against me." Now, Fittler's 2 other children, ages 6 and 9 at the time period, lived with their relatives. They finally got custody from the state. Fittler's prison sentence length is intended to ensure that her children would be adults by the time she is released from prison. Like I said before, in this way they would not be returned to her custody. But here's where the story gets tricky. For you see, Mrs. Fittler said she performed the same functions as the child's aunt did that night. Fittler's statement is that on November the 4th, 2010, she fed, bathed, and dressed her baby and laid her down. She writes that she passed out on the couch, and when she awoke, she said her aunt found Maggie May dead in the clothes washing machine. Now, in one instance, she goes to protect herself. In the next instance, she's about to put her aunt directly under the bus. Now, after this time, Fittler wasted no time in throwing her aunt under the bus for what she did. Fittler says her aunt Rhonda Coshat was also with her in the home when Maggie May drowned. She says her aunt was high on morphine, but that she doesn't know who put the baby in the washer. The first thing that people do in a criminal case is make sure they either take a bunch of people in prison with them, or they throw people under the bus. And Barstow police said her aunt Coshat was on prescribed medication and did not break the law so that morphine was prescribed. They said Coshat was investigated. It was discussed with the DA, and they don't expect charges will be filed against her.
You're watching MNN, the Men's Channel.
The judge ruled in this case that Miss Fiddler's conscious decision to ingest the methamphetamine along with other prescription medication directly led to the death of Maggie May. He said the defendant's intoxication rendered her incapable of caring for her child and exposed her infant child to consequences of illegal drug use. After release from incarceration, Fiddler will be closely supervised for an additional 15 years, even when she gets out of jail. Now that's in the event of future violations of the law or rules of probation. Fiddler will be subject to serving the remainder of the sentence in jail if she breaks her probation rules. Bartsville Police Chief Tom Holland says in his 40 years of police work, he has never seen or heard anything like this. He says, I started in Fort Worth and have walked into apartments with 7 dead bodies, seen terrible crimes, mass murder, but he has not seen anything like this. Records show Fiddler has had many run-ins with Bartsville police. She's been found guilty of larceny, assault and battery, many times for failing to show up for court. She also has been stopped several times for speeding, driving without a license, and not having her kids, as I said before, in car seats. So this was a tragedy just waiting to happen, I imagine. She was arrested in April that same year for possession of a controlled drug when she was 4 months pregnant. She got a 1-year suspended sentence and 10 days in jail, but didn't show up for her court date. Fiddler's family tried back in June of that year, when she was pregnant, to intervene, as I said before, because they were so concerned about her drug abuse, to get her parental rights revoked, but it didn't happen. So not only for the baby that was coming, but for her 2 boys that she had become long neglectful of. Now, a terrible tragedy has occurred that has devastated not only her family, but also the emergency responders. One witness said, I know the detective in this case. He's a veteran detective who was taking photos at the hospital and he had to step out for a while. He's got 3 girls. So even a veteran detective couldn't take the pain. For Filicide, this is Charles Rivers. We hope to see you again next time.
Thank you.